and welcome to our second Epay Tips and Changes webinar for the week of January the 25th. Now, as we go through today's session, we will, obviously all the attendees are muted. Please ask all your questions via the GoToWebinar question area of the control panel, and I'll be happy to address your questions at the appropriate time during our conversations today. Now, as you read in our Epay update, we have a couple topics we want to talk about, three primary topics, starting with our Blueforce audit trails. So I'm going to go through that piece just to kind of show you so you know how to correlate that audit trail into your day-to-day routine, but more importantly, how to see and understand their value. Then we're going to go through the granular security changes that we talked about over the last two webinars, but this one's more specifically so I can show you how to add FONEN numbers, meaning for those sites that have the employees clocking in and clocking out via the phone system. We'll show you how to go in there and add the caller ID phone numbers to register those sites properly. And then we'll actually also go through the adding of working jobs to an employee record. So basically, how to get the system to know what jobs an employee is supposed to be punching in and out of, or give the employee the ability to clock in and clock out of multiple jobs. Then lastly, we're going to wrap up our conversation today with look at just two basic reports. The first report will be the time card report, and the other report we'll look at is just simply referred to as the time card audit report. Now, in both cases, these are basic reports we'll go through, and we'll add some other reports as we go through in future webinars, but this is the first two, kind of the more important ones to get the ball rolling. So without further ado, let's go into our first topic. Our first topic was Blueforce audit trails. So the question always comes up from when we start, going through here is, what is an audit trail? What's the purpose of audits in Blueforce, and why do we need all this stuff? Well, first off, an audit trail in Blueforce is simply a sequence of time card entries that basically validates or invalidates the employee's final timesheet. So everyone understands is, when you go in and an employee actually clocks in and clocks out, when you go into Blueforce, you can actually see a lot of information. You can see when the employee punched in, obviously when the employee punched out, but more so you can see the origin of that punch. Where that punch originate. Was it on a Walter device? Was it on a phone-in punch? Was it a mobile device? Where did that punch originate? And then you can go dig a little further with this audit trail. You can actually see who made any changes to that time. One of the key things about Blueforce that we have not had with any other system is that we can actually go in there and see when the change was made, who did the change, and why they made that change. So if there's ever a question about someone's punches not showing up right, or you see something a little odd with maybe a color or whatnot on the screen, you can quickly go into the audit trail and see all the other information and detail that's provided there for you. I'm going to show you how to get there here during our little live demo momentarily. Secondly, the Blueforce audit trail shows in chronological order when time punches occurred, where the time punches originated, and notes any subsequent manual changes. Manual changes is the key thing here, because we don't want to be messing with an employee's punch unless we really have to. And we really shouldn't be touching employee punches, period. But the value here is because it gives everyone the ability to prevent and catch fraud. So you can kind of see what the employees are doing or not doing. You can also see if someone else maybe their management supervisor is kind of adding extra hours here and there. All that's going to be very visible on the audit trail. Then lastly, it helps ensure that the employee gets paid correctly for all the hours that are worked. So the audits are basically a protection for you, for us the user, but also for the employee using Blueforce on a daily basis. Now, one of the things I will show you as we go through here is the audit trails. When you go to and what I'm showing here on the screen here is a picture of the time card screen. The time card view here, when you go in, you may or may not have noticed you have a variety of different colors that appear on the screen. Now, one thing that you do have available for you at the top left of this screen is a little link called Time Card Legend, shown here right at the top left-hand corner. When you click on that link, it's going to give you a listing, a little pop-up window with all the different color codes as to what each color means. Obviously, the two key ones that we're going to be talking about today are the yellows and the oranges. Now, let me tell you, the yellows are basically whenever you go to a time card screen and see a yellow, that is telling you that someone has manually inputted that time. So that basically means that that employee did not punch in, but rather was manually punched into the system by an editor, submitter, or someone with an approver role, which is typically maybe a supervisor or maybe the employee's manager that enter that time for them. If you are in there and you're noticing that the same employee is always always has a yellow punch in the system, that should be a quick cue to let you know that we're not using a time collection system as we should be using it. If you see an orange, the orange is telling you that there is a change to the existing time has been made. That means that time that has been manually entered or actually collected automatically via one of the time collection methods, whether it be the Walter time clock or the FONEN, the call-in system, the mobile, or the web punch. One of those four methods, someone's gone in there and actually edited that punch that the employee actually punched in and punched out on their own accord for. So whenever you see an orange, that should be a little telltale sign that someone's gone in there and made some type of change to the record. Now, also with the Blueforce, the audit trail, is that when you do see an orange, that could also mean that someone's gone in there and changed the job record. And sometimes you'll see the orange highlight over the job field here in the middle of the screen. So I'm going to use my pin mark here. So right in the pin, if you ever see orange in this middle section here that I'm circling in green, that's just saying that someone's gone in there and changed the job that the employee punched in. Because we know some of our employees, they aren't perfect and they sometimes punch in and punch out to the wrong job, and that typically happens. If you see orange in any of the other columns, for example, task, it's saying that someone's gone in there and changed the task because maybe they punched in as a custodian, but they should have punched in as a window washer today. Or maybe they were a security guard today and they were actually supposed to have been a landscaper. That's probably a far-fetched example, but that does happen. So the oranges on the other columns are not as critical. However, if you ever see an orange like you see here on this screen under the actual time punches, that's something that should be brought to your attention immediately, because that's saying that we are actually adjusting punches or changing punches that an employee actually punched in and out of on their own accord. Now, one thing you'll also notice here on the far left-hand side of every line, first the audit trail begins with these colors, but on the far left-hand side, you have these little links that say called View Details. So all these up here on the far left-hand side. These View Detail links will give you the more detailed information about that punch, that corresponding punch that you're looking at. So if we go to my next screen here, you'll see that the View Details option gives you a couple options to pick from. You can split a time card from here, which I won't talk about today, but you have the options to split time. You have an option to go View Allocation as well. They also have View Audit. Now, one of the options that's not on here, for those that are on the call that use mobile punch, a fourth option to pop up on the list is called View Map. So that View Map gives you the opportunity to go in and see the punches an employee made within via the mobile app, and you can kind of see on the map where that employee was at the time they punched in. And I'll demo that. I've had a request to demo that, and I'll demo that here in one of our future upcoming webinars. But View Audit is the one we're going to focus on today. When you click on View Audit, it's going to pop up a screen very similar to the one at the very bottom of the screen. It's going to give you all the detail behind, what exactly occurred with that punch. So I'll demo this live here momentarily, but this gives you an opportunity to see that the in punches are reflected at the bottom line. It tells you when the punch occurred, the time the punch occurred, and it gives you a color code for that punch. Now, I didn't talk about green yet, but whenever you see a green background, and this can all be found back in that legend that I was referring to, that green background is letting you know that that employee punched in via the phone-in system, meaning they called in that toll-free number, they punched in on the phone. And it also tells you on the far right-hand side that it was a new time card added. So the employee basically punched in, punched out, created this time card themselves. Now, the orange comes into play now here because now you have a change in color. Notice here that now in the oranges, it pops up in here. Oh, let me go back one, sorry. So the orange that pops up here in the bottom of the screen is really just telling you that someone has made a change in time from 5:39 to 5:32. So that 5:32 is basically important to note that we've actually shorted the employee 7 minutes. So the question becomes, whenever you see anything from an audit perspective, whether it be our internal audit here at ISS North America, or if it's an ISS group audit from our group division in Denmark, or whether it be the Department of Labor, whenever they see anything like this in which we're limiting or reducing the time for an employee, that's going to raise a lot of questions. Now, what the system does is when someone does make a change to an employee time, it does let you know that the timeout was changed. But more importantly, it also tags who and when did it. Now, this example right here where I put the little green X, there's a name there. I just decided to cover it up for this sake of discussion. There's no reason to draw attention to that certain person right now, but that does note who made that change. Now, more so with this, with the audit, obviously, you're lowering the minutes. Now, one thing I will bring up, and I'll probably bring it up again in our next conversation here, piece, but I want to bring it up that there is a rounding rule in place now. So if you were thinking that, that this is going to help in a way, shape, form, it might. But if you look right now, the difference between 532 and 539, like I said, is a good old 7 minutes. However, if we had left, because of the rounding rule, the rounding rounds up to the nearest quarter hour, the out punch would have actually shown up as 5:45. So you would have gone into the actual timesheet and seen 5:45 out punch with a 22:30 in punch. But since it's been corrected now, when you go back in there and look, it'll show a rounded time of 23:30 as the in punch, but the out punch would actually reflect as 5:30. And I apologize, it's hard to draw with my mouse, but you see a 5:30 to 5:45 difference, which actually means we actually shorted the employee not only 7 minutes, it actually was a total of 15 minutes. So I'm going to bring this up a little bit more because we shouldn't be going in there and just jacking around with those punches just for the simple fact of trying to get out from paying somebody, because that obviously will come back to haunt us down the road when either A, the employee realizes this, or B, an audit discovers other things going on. So I'm going to go ahead and erase this screen here. And before I go any further, I'm going to stop. I'm going to go into our live little demo, in which I'm going to show you this audit trail on my screen here. So I'm going to log in as my webinar login that I have set up. And this login is identical to a submitter role. So for those that are submitters up there, you can go here and kind of see that this is what you're going to be looking at as well. And when you come to this screen, the audits can be found on either the time card or timesheet view. Time card is where you normally would go for your daily review of time. And let me stress on that, if you are not going through on a daily basis to review your punches, I think you're going to set yourself up for some failure later in the future. So I would get into the habit as when you're in the office, check on your punches. First thing, make sure you clear out any open punches. Make sure everything looks good so that way you can continue on. Now, when you come in here, obviously the time card screen is right here in the middle, the time card icon. When I go ahead and click on time cards, and let me do that right now, it's going to give me the opportunity now to pick my job. So as I always mention, the first thing you want to do is pick the job that you want to work with. In my case, I'm going to pick a test group that I have already set up in the system. And I always pick this group because I have just some selected jobs, smaller group to work with. And then once I'm in here, I can now see all of the different punches that are sitting out there for a particular date range. And the date range is given by that screen by the option up here at the very top of the screen, the date from and date to. So keep in mind when you log in the first time of your business day, you're going to log in there. You're going to notice that it's always going to default to yesterday through today's time. That's perfectly normal. At this point, you have the opportunity to go in there and adjust it as you need. The one thing I want to bring to your attention that I didn't bring up on the last webinar, but I've had a couple questions just come through the help desk and whatnot. The punch type. You always want to make sure that when you're doing your daily review, even if this may not be the case for everybody, just get the habit of changing this to show open and zero punches as well. The reason I always ask you to do it this route is because if you have any zero punches that are out there or any what we refer to as like phantom punches that are sitting out there, where they were not actually zeroed out, that someone just went in there and put a in and out that matched identically. They are zero time punches, but they do affect you when you're trying to look for overlapping punches. So keep in mind that show open and zero punches will reflect everything for you as needed. And obviously, just click search there, and it'll actually update your screen. Now that's one of the we have some documentation behind that will show you to always come in here and say show open and zero punches as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to expand my my dates out a little bit more so I can have some different options of viewing on the screen. Now, as I go through here, right now I only have Edward as one of my options just because of my job selection that I have right now on my screen. But as you go through here, you'll see that you have the option of seeing those show open and zero punches I'm talking about. I'm going to go back to all punches for this particular example. And I'm going to go through here, and you're going to notice that you have a variety of different colors showing up over all the different punch-ins. So as I mentioned, the time card legend up in the top left-hand corner is going to pop up this little window, and I'm just going to circle it because it's hard to see it right now because it looks like the view details pops up on top of it. That's something that our support team over in Epay is actually working on right now to resolve. So that's going to hopefully get resolved here sooner rather than later. But that little legend screen is going to help you because it's going to tell you what each color corresponds with and what does it mean for you. For this example, what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the legend. I'm not going to worry about that, but kind of looking over on the right-hand side here, all these little punches that are looking perfectly fine, and I'll circle a couple examples. So like these first couple that are just in black text but white backgrounds, those punches are being collected via a Walter time clock. So if you see just a plain background punch, that's a Walter time clock punch. If you ever see anything with a green background like I showed earlier, that green background is going to be a phone-in, meaning someone's called in from the phone system, and that's what they're doing there. Furthermore, you notice you see a couple other ones. And the cool thing about this is there's no nothing to be worried about if you don't know what the colors mean, because they can always go in to the time card ledger or just basically click on that punch and just rest your arrow right on top of it. It's going to actually tell you what exactly that punch came in from. So like these peach colored ones came in from the mobile device. Someone actually clocked in and out of the mobile device. And these that are actually, I'll keep going over here a little bit furthermore. These, if you ever seen like a pinkish color, actually take it back, a little light bluish color, those are going to be from the web punch. So those do we all do the web punch in and out. You'll see those out there as well. Now you do see some others occasionally that are in gray like this. This is going to tell you that that punch came in from a Walter with a mismatched fingerprint. So that kind of gives you some background as well. But more times than not, you'll also see from a daily review standpoint, you'll see the ones with the black backgrounds. And the black backgrounds are the ones that, those are open punches that something has to be done with them. So just kind of a quick overview. Those are the kind of the different colors that are involved on this particular screen. So let me do this. Let me go back. I'm not going to use today's date. Let me go back to earlier in the week. Let's see if I can find some changes that are punches that have been changed. So first page here looks all right. And lo and behold, there's one yellow one right there. So that yellow punch here, let me just circle it so everyone can see it. That yellow punch right here is basically a punch that was manually added. From this screen, you know that it was manually added because of the color yellow. But more so, you also have a modified date. That's the last time someone's made a change to this record. So it could have been back on 125 that change was made. Now, that's not a good thing because the original punch happened here on 121. It took them 4 days to make that correction. That is not the proper way of doing your daily review. Obviously, you need to stay on top of it and make sure you're checking punches and not waiting until the last day or last moment of the pay period to correct them. I guarantee you the only old analogy I always use is that, think about it. If someone asked you what you had for lunch yesterday, a lot of us probably couldn't remember what we did yesterday, much as wanting to know what we did 2 weeks ago at the beginning of a pay period. So to kind of add to that point, the next thing I would ask everyone to do is from an audit trail to view, what actually happened there with that yellow punch. Click on View Details on that same line, and then select View Audit. Now, when I click on View Audit, that's going to give me kind of the whole picture of what happened with that punch. So right here at the top of the screen, you'll notice that the initial punch occurred at 1640. That employee was Manuel Benavides. He created that punch, and he basically did a new time card. The next action on this punch didn't occur until actually was filled in for 121 at clock out at 1040. The reason was that it was an employee's fault for a missed punch, and Mr. Palencia, which is one of our managers, made that correction on 125. So from that perspective, we know that it was fixed. The employee is going to get paid correctly, and we know who made that change in case anything comes up that we need to just find out, why did it take 4 days to do, or in this case, is the employee having an issue, or in this case, it says you just forgot basically. But we have a full audit trail and kind of picture as to what's going on there. Now, I did have a question pop in that says kind of the same scenario as, if I had someone punch out instead of punch in, what is the best way to correct this? Well, the best way to correct it is always keep the original line the employee created. So on my screen here, let me go back to the regular went line. For Manuel Benavides here, that's the exact same example that you're asking as far as this question goes. What happens if he punched out instead of punched in? It doesn't matter. What you want to do is you want to preserve the employee's punches as best you can. If he only punched out, go in, select that particular line, and say Edit, select the time cards. And select the time cards is that little option at the very top of the screen. Okay? So let me do this. I'm going to do one better for you. I'm going to see if I can find an example like that. I am playing with live data here, so I try not to go in here and make any major changes, but I can walk through the process with you. So right here, that's a perfect example. So right here, if someone punched out but did not punch in, you're going to see this option right here. It says waiting for in punch. Okay. Same scenario, the other scenario, he punched in but didn't punch out. This one is he didn't punch in, but he did punch out. If an employee, I'm just going to put a side note here, if an employee has an issue clocking in or clocking out, if an employee has an issue punching in and for some reason doesn't punch in, still have them go to the clock and try to punch out. We want to have some type of record that they actually were at the job site, obviously, that they actually worked, that they actually did something. But you at least recapture one of the punches. You can actually come back in here and fix the other punch by simply going to the far left-hand corner of the line, and you'll see where I'm circling here. You have a little box, a little checkbox. That checkbox is going to be used where you can actually just simply go and click it. Go to the top of the grid, say Edit, select the time cards, and then from there you can go in and fill in the actual out time, or sorry, the in time in this case. So if he had punched in at, say, 3 o'clock, I'll go in here and put in 1500. Drop down my reason code as to why he missed the punch. Maybe it was a system issue. And then says save. When you hit save, I'm not going to do it here, but you'll get a little green little circle on the screen right to the left of the employee name. And that'll give you confirmation that it's saved. Now, obviously, you'll see the punch also corrected here in the grid. But, yeah, it does not matter. I mean, if the in or an out, it's going to fix it the same way. But very good question. Thanks for asking that. But the audit trails are right here in front of you. If you ever need them, and I'll move on to the next topic here, but if you ever need to, click on View Details, go into View Audit, and you can now see the whole entire picture as to what exactly occurred with that particular employee. Now, let me go back to my slides, and let's go over to our next topic, which is the granular security setup as it relates to FONEN. Now, for many of you on this call, you may not use the FONEN system. That's the employee way of clocking in and out via a toll-free phone number. The employees are prompted for their employee ID, and then they enter that. And after that, the system makes a determination based on the phone number they're calling from, their caller ID information from that phone, and determines, do I go ahead and clock them into a specific job, or if they don't recognize that phone number, the system will say, you know what, I need to find out, so I'm going to ask the employee, what is the job number you're trying to clock into? So this next section, I'm going to show you how to go in there and add those specific caller ID numbers to register them at the job level. Therefore, the employee can now not have to worry about knowing a job number. They basically go to that phone, they call in, the caller ID returns to Epay or returns to Blueforce. Blueforce then says, I know what job the employee wants to work, and boom, they're clocked in. It's very simple as that. So to that point, Granular security at the level of a job means you're going to go into the job record. There is a tab at the very bottom of the screen in which you have a kind of a wide open box area that you can actually go down here and key in your phone numbers. Once the phone numbers are there and saved, they are immediately live, and now the employee can now go to that job, clock in from that particular phone number, and proceed to go to work. One thing that we do recommend is if it's not a work-issued cell phone, don't put that number into the box here. In other words, no personal cell phones where you can help that. Reason being is the employee may or may not try to go from their home and get paid for that extra time to get from their home to their job site, or maybe decide they're not going to go to work at all that day and just punch in and punch out, and you think otherwise that they're actually at the job site. So typically what we recommend is get a landline there at the job site. The customer allows us to use their phone. Put in that number here into the empty box, and that way the employee gets to the job site, they have a designated phone to call in and out of, and we know that they're actually on site. Or you can obviously, if you have a supervisor cell phone that needs to be put in here, they can all chime in off of that supervisor cell phone at the job site as well. So one of the things about adding phone numbers to this box, we want to make sure that all entered registered caller ID numbers are basically separated with commas. So no spaces between the numbers, and we want no digits or nothing else other than the 10 digits of the phone number. So no dashes, no commas, no nothing else. It's like the example here. So if I have 3 different numbers at this job, I can go in there and put my numbers set up just exactly like that. 10 digits, comma, 10 digits, comma, 10 digits, comma, and so forth. Now, one thing that we will require you to do as part of this process is to click Find Sites with Overlapping Caller IDs after you've entered the number. This will let you know immediately if that number is already in use at another job site. The reason we do this is because we want each site to be kind of a one-to-one relation with a particular caller ID phone number. This way, we ensure that the employee knows what job they're in. They have to will not get prompted for a job number. They automatically know, the system automatically knows that that phone number is linked to one specific job. Because if we had set up the same number on 10 different jobs, Blueforce is not going to know what job needs to take the labor. Therefore, it's automatically going to ask the employee to punch in their phone number, and the whole purpose of phone-in and getting the phone registered is going to be out the door. So once again, we always check for overlapping caller IDs, make sure it's unique, and then we also enable, there's a function on here called enable caller ID matching that I'll show you here in a moment in a live demo. But with these, kind of steps in place and the process working based on these little rules, we've actually been pretty successful with FONEN thus far. So let me go back to my my Blueforce screen, and this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the job record. So this is where everything is his house is a job record. Now everyone on this phone call, all editors, submitters, and approvers have access to doing this step. And one thing I will stress to everybody is in your control panel screen area, I don't know if you have it minimized or cut off the screen, the control panel area for this webinar call, there is a section called handouts in which you can actually go to that section. You may have to hit the little plus sign to expand it. You don't know if you see it or if it's collapsed or not. But in there's 2 documents that are sitting in there. If you click on those documents, you have the opportunity to download and save them to your computer. And I would take the opportunity to do that at some time before you get off on the phone today. Once you turn off the disconnect your webinar session, all bets are off here. But there are 2 documents there. One of them is going to be for phone-in steps, and one of them is going to be covering the next step called working jobs. But both of them give you the step-by-step process of how to do this process. So that gives you opportunity now to take those documents and hold on to them for your reference. So in here, I can go to my job record. Once again, when I go to jobs, I have a list of all the jobs that I have access to seeing. And I'm going to go ahead and take my search criteria out of here so I can see all of the ones that are out there. And the example that I want to make sure I give to everybody is if I go ahead and pick my job, in this case I'm going to pick a job called 100 My Main Office, which is a fictitious job. But I want to show you from this particular screen that I could actually go down here to my FONEN and time clock setup tab. That FONEN and time clock setup tab is going to allow me to go in there and add, where is it at? Right there, perfect. My phone and time clock setup tab will now let me go through and actually add the phone numbers I want to add for this particular job. Now, one thing I'll draw everyone's attention to is if you look at the screen, you notice here that there's sections that are in orange, kind of have little orange tabs on it or orange labels onto each of them. Each tab also that's orange, you'll see here. These that have all circled here are all tabs in which you cannot go and edit. You can view, but you can't do anything else with it. The ones that are in blue, which is the phone and time clock setup tab, as well as the holiday and exception dates tab, we won't be talking about that on this call, but those are wide open, allowing you to make changes to those particular tabs as needed. Now, one thing I'll want to stress to everybody is you can actually go to this phone and time clock setup tab, and you have the ability of going in and putting as many phone numbers as you want in this particular screen. So if I wanted to, I could say there's 3 different phone numbers here. I could actually go in there and put my first number, put a comma, put in my second number, comma, put in my third number. Keep in mind, it's always a 10 digits that will be needed in here, so it'll be basically the area code followed by the 7-digit phone number. Now, once I have all those numbers in there, I want to come down to the bottom, click on Find Sites with Overlapping Caller IDs. When I click on it, if I don't get anything returned back on the screen, then that means that everything is set up correctly. If I do get something back, and I don't have my specific number in here that I can show you this, but if I go ahead and put a number that's already used on another job, right under the Find Sites and with Overlapping Caller ID button there, you're going to get a little purple message that's going to tell you that that phone number is in use at another job, and it will give you the actual job number that the phone number is in use. So at that point, you have some options. The option is either A, go to that job, remove the phone number from that job, and keep it on this job that you're trying to add it to, or B, don't put that phone number in either job. Because by having it on both jobs, it's not going to do any benefit. It's going to be the same as not even having it at all. So remember, phone-in is really for a one-to-one relationship with the particular caller ID phone number. And then once you're done here, you want to also come down right underneath that Find Sites with Overlapping Caller IDs, and then right here where I'm circling, you have an option that says Enable Caller ID Matching. In order for phone-in to start working, you need to have that checked. Once I check it, I hit save, then all these phone numbers that I've currently put into that register caller ID section are now active and now working for the employees. So you can actually do this if you have a new job startup. You can do this in advance, or maybe you have a new phone number, a work issued phone number you're going to give to an employee. That employee's going to start this new job, put in that phone number, hit save, so that when they get to the job site, they can go in there and start calling in and recording their time immediately. So once again, this is all off of the job record. So to get to that tab, all you're doing is going to the bottom of the screen on the job record, going to the phone-in and time clock setup tab, and then in there you can actually go in there and fiddle around with that caller ID setup. So I have one question here. Let me see. So I have a user that goes back to our prior conversation about the audit trails. And one thing I didn't mention was part of this question So why is it each time that I split time when an employee didn't clock in, um, that I need to, or I need to move hours to another account, after I make changes, the time shows up in yellow. So whenever you go into the system and use the split time function, the system will automatically make your punches as yellow because they're manually created punches. They're not punches that the employee did. So it does show yellow on your screen. However, from an audit perspective, it is noted that way, and it will show in the audit trail as, you know, Joe made the change, and it'll show you, it'll actually say there that the change was made via split time. So we know from that perspective that it was something that was done, and it's perfectly fine to go in there and do the split functions to split time around. That's perfectly fine, because using that split function, you are not editing an employee's punch. What you're doing is you're spreading that employee's punches amongst multiple jobs. So the in and out punch are still preserved in the system, and that's the main key point here. They're still preserved. What we don't want is someone to go in there and mess with those in and out punches. That's kind of what the whole message is there. So a very good question on there as well. All right, so that's FONEN. It's a very simple piece to do that. And once again, that's turned on now. You can actually go and begin doing those adjustments forward. If you do put in a help desk ticket for something like this, we may ask you to go ahead and try this and try to set up yourself first, and then if you have any issues, we'll jump in. All right, so moving right along, the next topic is our working jobs. So one of the things that we've added back to everybody is the ability to go in and maintain their own working jobs. So the question is, what is a working job? The employee, and I'll show you here shortly, each employee has a set list of working jobs that is initially driven off of what they're set up in JDE. In JDE, each employee, and this is JD Edwards, every employee is set up with an assignment type, and that assignment type can be either job, district, or area. There's some other options, but mostly it's those three: job, district, or area. If they are a job assignment employee, they're only going to be able to clock in and out or have a working job of their default job, wherever it may be. If they are a district assignment type, then their working jobs will be driven by all of the jobs that are in that district. So they'll be able to clock in and out of any job within that district. If they are an area assignment type, they are available to clock in and out of any job within that particular city or area that they are out of, whatever office that may be. So that is just kind of the basic setup for how working jobs are driven. Now, when you go into Blueforce, I have an example here on the screen that shows Mr. James Douglas, who has a working job of just one job called U.S. Airways Hangar. So he was set up as a job assignment type employee over in JDE, and when JDE sent that information to Blueforce, it only gave him that access to that one job. So for Mr. Douglas here, if he goes to job 5009581, which is U.S. Airways Hangar, he can clock in and out with no problems. If he goes to another job, say a job, and that job is 5020055, it's not a part of his assigned job. So if he tries to go and clock in from that job number with his employee ID, the system's going to say he does not have access to basically clock into that site. So this is where you come in now. So now you have the ability now to go and add additional working jobs to an employee. So for example, if James had to go in, Mr. Douglas here had to go into another job for the night to cover someone else's shift, you could have preemptively gone into the system, go into Blueforce here, go to the employee's working jobs tab, and then go in there and add that job so he can clock in and out of. Now, having working jobs listed here is only for the convenience of you and the employee. This doesn't mean that because you have a job in here, for example, maybe a district type employee that has all the district jobs, just because they have more jobs than what they actually are going to work does not mean that's a bad thing. You're just giving them the flexibility to be able to go to another job and clock in and clock out as needed. If they work this job, another job from maybe once a week or maybe once a month, and you say, you know what, they don't need that job all the time in there, what's going to happen is every time they go work that job, you're going to have to go in there and add it for them. If you choose to not add that number and they can't actually clock in at that job site, then that time has to be added manually to the employee's time card or timesheet. And guess what? At that point, you're going to have to say, you know what? I need to add that job to the working jobs anyways, because working jobs also drives what jobs the employee's time can be added for. So if you have ever a situation where you have to go and add time for somebody and you can't, it's either A, because you don't have access to doing that, or B, which is more likely the case, that employee just simply does not have that job under their working jobs. So adding working jobs basically is a very simple process. I'm going to walk you through here in a live demo. We're going to search for the unassigned jobs for the job that you need added to the employee's working jobs. And you can do this by searching by job number, which most of us know those job numbers, or name, address, export category, which is the district of the job, the city, state, or zip. And then we're going to go through and assign those jobs over to the employee's job list. And then if we need to, as a separate step, we're going to go in there and mark any jobs needing web access if that person or that employee is going to be working that job via web punch. So those are some of the things we'll go through here now in our little live demo. So for this, I'm going to go back to Blueforce, and I'm going to go in and actually now go to my employee records. So this is done at the employee level. And the question I always get is when I go to employees, I have a list of, in my case, it says 290 employees. But I'm going through this list and I notice that I have a Jane Doe. And I don't know who Jane Doe is. Jane Doe doesn't belong to me. She's not one of my employees. Well, Jane Doe's probably popping up on the list because one of her working jobs is one of the jobs that's currently selected here on the left-hand side of your grid. So whenever you see an employee that, it may not be yours, it's because he or she has that job or is able to see that job that you've selected over here in the far left-hand side of the window. Once again, it's not a bad thing. I know sometimes it's a nuisance because you see extra employees and you're like, who's that? However, it gives that employee the ability to clock in or out of one of your jobs that are needed. Now, if they don't belong in that job altogether, then go to the employees. You have access to the employee records. You see it here on the screen. Go to the employee record and remove that working job from their available list. So let me go in here. I'm going to go into Jane Doe in this particular example. And you'll notice that when I go to Jane Doe, I'm going to go down to the bottom part of the screen. I'm going to go to the Working Job tab, which actually is showing right now for me. And right here on the right-hand side, you'll see a listing of all the jobs that are referred to as assigned. Now, the key word is you have assigned on one side, and you have unassigned on the left side. So if you see the job listed there on the right-hand side, that means you can go to any one of those job sites right now. Go to that site, go to the phone-in device, go to the mobile device, go to the web punch. If there's a time clock there, more than likely that employee can punch in and punch out to one of those job sites. Now, if you need to add a job, what you're going to want to do is go to the left-hand side to the unassigned section, hit the drop-down where it says select, and pick one of the ways you want to search for that job you want to add. If you know a job number, you're more than welcome to go in there and key in just part of the number or all the number. And I'm going to just do the first couple digits, 5021. And it's going to all the jobs that start with 5021. And as I go through here, I say, oh, there it is. Mid-Continent Library, Smithfield. Okay, that's the job I need for this employee because they're going to work a job there tonight. I'm just going to go through. I'm going to click on it to highlight that job. I'm going to come over here to the middle section. I notice here in the middle section I have a couple options. I have assign or remove. If you assign, it's going to take it to the right-hand side. Same thing going the other way is the remove. If I go to remove, it's going to take me to the left-hand side. So when I'm going to add a new job to someone's working jobs, I always click on assign. And then in return, if I ever want to go in and remove a job, for example, I want to remove the Greyhound Lines job that's on her record now, or right now, so I click on remove, and it'll send it back to the left. Now, if it does not, once again, I can't stress enough, if it's not appearing on the right-hand side of the screen, that person cannot work that job. I mean, they can work the job, they just cannot clock in or out to that job or record any time to that job. So that is a very simple process. I search for my name, my job. If I need to, I just also do by city. If I know it's in somewhere in San Antonio, I can do a go. And depending on how it's spelled in the system or what access I have access to see will determine. Now I'm in San Antonio, but my user ID here doesn't have access to all the San Antonio jobs. But this is the only job that popped up under my access with San Antonio. Maybe I want to look for something in Dallas. Notice I have no access to any of the jobs in Dallas. So this is strictly based on your security as well. So keep that in mind. If you don't see a job here pop up that you're looking for, make sure you have access to that job for starters. And secondly, make sure it's not already showing on the right-hand side. Because I can tell you Alamo Cafe has a San Antonio address or a San Antonio city listed on their job record. However, it didn't pull up on my search on the left-hand side because it's already available to that employee. The only option that you cannot use is phone number. We don't bring phone numbers for job sites over from JDE, so that's going to be a moot point for you. But everything else should work just perfectly fine for you. Job ID and job number are identical. They're the same thing, so you can put the job number, job ID identically and search for it as well. Keep in mind that once you're done adding the number, your options to the screen, make sure you come back down here to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen and decide if you want to save or cancel. Obviously, you should save. Save saves your work, and you'll get a message saying that it's been successfully saved. Otherwise, if you hit cancel, that means anything you just did is off or not. And I'm going to cancel, so I don't want to save my changes to my test user here. So once I hit cancel, it'll take me back to, or save, either way, it'll take me back to my main screen. Alrighty, so that's kind of the granular security changes for FONEN and the working jobs tab. So I have a question here. It says, can a different job be chosen on the Walter clock when an employee clocks in? And can he choose a work order number via the Walter? So, good question. So, as it relates to this particular screen, let me go back to my my Jane Doe example. Actually, I'll pick on Edward. I'm gonna pick on Edward today. Edward's my my test example that I use all the time. But let's look at Edward here. Notice he has 7 jobs on his working jobs. Okay. Let's say he goes over to job A, and job A is at Walter device and his time clock. And when he goes to the Walter device, he notices that the Walter only shows him these 2 jobs available for him to clock in. He can only clock in at job 833 and 834. These 2 kind of put in green. But he really wants to clock into the Whataburger job that's at the very top of the screen on this particular screen. The way the Walters work is when a request comes to either myself or Tiandra here at corporate, we configure a clock, we ship it out to the job site based on the jobs that are required on the clock. Okay, if the Walter has both of these jobs on it, and Edward is able to see both of those jobs based on his working jobs record here, then he'll be able to clock into either one of those jobs. However, if that Walter is set up with only one job number, and Edward can get to that job number, then he's only going to get prompted with that one job number that's on the clock. Keep in mind, the Walter will only allow you to see the jobs that the Walter itself has been set up for. We never set up a Walter or a time clock like that wide open for access to all jobs. It's specifically named jobs. So whatever is on the Walter device in conjunction with what he can actually see under working jobs will drive what he can actually select at the clock. Now, if he goes to a clock and has that's not even at a job site that's not even listed under his working jobs, when he gets to that clock, the clock's gonna know it's not gonna recognize him. It's gonna be like, I don't know who you are. Don't bother me. You can't clock in. So keep that in mind as well. The working jobs is what drives what access an employee has to punch in and punch out of. As far as a work order, yeah, if he has access to a job and there's a corresponding work order with that job, then yeah, the employee can select the work order from the Walter device. FONEN is a little different because the FONEN is still going to follow the same premise, but the FONEN will give the opportunity for the employee to get a little bit more wider range. If we don't use that caller ID function I was talking about in FONEN a little while ago, and an employee punches in, tries to punch into a job, doesn't recognize that phone number that you're calling in from, the system will ask them what job number, basically, please enter job number. At that point, the employee can enter any of these job numbers and punch in. Keep in mind that the system will note that as an unapproved punch from the time card, because you'll be able to be notified via that little color code letting you know that something's quite not right here. What happened. By viewing the audit trail on that time card line, you can actually see what phone number that person called in from. So that way you can kind of track down, is that a number that's actually valid, or I need to add it to the job record? Or more so, is that employee's cell phone number that he's calling in from? Is that a number from another job site across town? Where's that number coming from? So from the phone-in perspective, I always say make sure you register a phone number at the job site. That's the best way to protect us all during this process. And as we wrap up our last few minutes together, we're going to go through real quick the running of some basic reports that are in the system. Now, the two reports that I want to focus on are they're both time card based. As like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, there will be some other reports that we'll add on through these webinars. And there's one that you really want to see, just drop me a note and we can make sure we include that. But right now, the two basic ones to get started there is a time card report and also a time card audit report. So the time card report basically can be run by job, employee, rate type, or punch type. It shows basically various columns and gives you the option in which it becomes very fluid to be able to go in there and check which fields you want to see on the report. So you don't have to take from at face value what it's giving you. You can go through and just start saying, I want this tab, I want this column, this column, and this column, but not these three columns. So I'll show you that here in a little bit. And then the time card audit report basically actually serves like an audit report from the audit screen like I showed you a little while ago. If you want to print this out or export this Excel to show all the changes that were made to an employee's record, you can export to Excel. But the key thing here is you can run it by job, employee, or by source. So you can see if you want it by source, you can say, I only want to audit the Walter punches, or I don't want to audit the phone-in punches. You have some flexibility there. But it provides you a view on every time card entry recorded in the system. So it gives you some flexibility there as well. Once again, both these reports are time card are accessed in Blueforce from the reports section. So when you go into Blueforce, you have the ability at the very top of the screen or from the home menu to click on reports. On the left-hand side of the report screen is where you're going to see all the reports that are available to you. Okay, these are all canned reports. If we need to open up some custom reports to you, we'll have a link at the very bottom of the screen that's called ad hoc reports, which you can go in there and see the custom reports that are created for everybody. But these are all custom, these are all, like I say, canned out of the box reports that Epay has put together for us. Time cards is right here at the very top of the screen, and looks very similar to what you see down here at the bottom of the window. So you have the ability on this report, as you see, and I'll go in and quickly demo this, but you have the opportunity now to check the boxes that you want to show when you actually run this report. So if you want a work order, you can check that box. If you just want to see the actual hours, you can check that box. And those two will be added to the right side of what you see down here at the bottom of the screen now. The beauty of this is you can actually export that. You have an option right here in the middle of the screen called Select Format, to which you can then export to Excel, and then from there you can take it any direction you want, because you can then manipulate it, move it around, do whatever you need to do in Excel to get it to look to what you need, or just dump the data out and you have it there for your reference as well. Now the other report is located about 3 clicks down on the left-hand column, and it's called Time Card Audits. If you look from the screen here, the Time Card Audits looks a little different in that it actually will show you the punches that had maybe some changes on it. You notice the color codes are there. The color codes will come over when you export this to Excel as well. So everything is preserved. But one thing you will notice is that each line that has, or any line that has something that's been edited or kind of needs to be looked at maybe more closely, there's a little arrow on it. So that line is telling you that someone has gone and edited that record some way, shape, form, or created some type of audit entry for that particular line. So you can actually click from this particular report, you can actually click on that arrow, and it'll expand it there for you as well from your view. So when you export it, it will give you all that extra detail down the middle. So let me spend the last 5 minutes we have here on this call and just go quickly show you these reports. The time card report is kind of the one I want to focus on, because that's the one that you can really run and see a lot of benefit from right now. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go and click on reports. And I'm going to click on time cards, which is the first option in the top left-hand corner. And it's going to pull up, by default, once again, the date range of yesterday through today. It's going to show you the kind of report that it's put together thus far for you based on your selected jobs that you did at the very beginning. So if these are not the jobs you want to see, go back to your job tab at the top of the screen and go through and reselect the new grouping of jobs or more jobs to work with in this particular view. Keep in mind the job selection is what drives everything in Blueforce. So for this example, I want to show the task the employee worked. I want to show and see if there's any work orders that employee worked alongside the time cards. And I want to see the rounded hours. I don't care about actual. I want to see what's actually going to be rounded time out of the system. And then just come back up here at the top and hit submit. Now when I do that, you will get a lot of information just exactly as you requested. Now notice here, none of them have work orders, which is not a big deal. They just didn't work any work orders. But you do notice a cool thing about the rounded times. The rounded times are actually the rounded punches as they would get paid with rounded hours. So this column at the far end, whenever you use the rounded times, will actually show you the number of hours an employee will get paid over in their timesheet. So I could actually go back in here. If this were phone-in sites, these are not, but if they were phone-in sites, I could actually select caller IDs, so actually see the caller IDs it called in from. Lunch, if I want to see if lunches were being taken out, I could turn lunch amount. There are a couple of different things you can do here, but you can actually check all of them if you want to. The key thing is a very fluid report. You have the option to decide what you want to show. You have a way of deciding which you want to sort by. And then when you're done here, there's a cool little area that you can now go in and export your report. So right here where I've circled here, if I go in and now click the format and say I want to do it to Excel, you can do it to PDF, but PDF locks your data, so always put Excel because then you can play with it, sort it, do whatever else you want to do after you get the data out. And then you can then go and just say update, export first off. If you make any changes to your selection criteria at the very top, just resubmit it before you actually export it. But nevertheless, that's the time card report. Now the other report I'll show you real quickly is a time card audit report. That's very similar. The only difference is you don't have the fluid ability to go in there and check boxes you want to see or don't see. The system just gives you the common fields as you would see on a time card entry. And at that point, you can then decide if you want to do something with it. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the lines that have little arrows next to it, one at the very bottom as well, those are telling you that someone's made some type of audit entry for that line. So what it says is if I click on any one of these, I can view the entries that were made to create that audit trail. It also tells you who did what and all that good stuff as you go through the particular screens. Now, when I do export this, this export option is just one option. You don't have the option to go to PDF or anything, but it's just one little click up here. When I do export to Excel, it's going to take all the colors codes that you see down here in your grid as well. And it'll actually break out all this detail for you as well on that report. This is a good report whenever you are curious as to those daily reports that are being sent out to all submitters. If you can't figure out, I see an open punch here, or I see other issues going on in the report, run this time card audit report and you can see more detail, or go to the audit trail and kind of follow that through and see where exactly the issues are occurring with the employees. So there are some other reports out here that I'll go through in other webinars here in the near future. There's a lot of them that we can go into discussions, but I think time cards, kind of where everyone is reviewing their daily time, going through and adding any work punches and whatnot. So we want to focus on these two reports to start with. So kind of to wrap up, as I always do, I just want to make sure that everyone's aware of the support kind of parameters here that are available for you. So Epay support is available kind of from an after-hours standpoint. They are available all the time, but I would say focus on them on after hours. So their information is there. Contact your IT support, which is myself and Tiandra, via help desk ticket, or call the help desk phone line number. Leave a message there for us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. But this is the priority, kind of the priority we give is everyone going through the help desk. We have to understand that Tiana and I are involved in umpteen thousand things and projects going around here, so we do get tied up and don't always check our emails, but we do give priority to this queue, so make sure you put in a help desk ticket. So with that, I just want to say to everyone, thank you for joining us. Our normal Epay tips and changes classes are going to be every Tuesday and Thursday, obviously, and it's always at 2 p.m. Central. Next week, we'll have some brand new topics that you'll read about in our Epay update that will be sent out on Monday. And if there's any other topic suggestions, anything else you want to see on these webinars, please email me in advance. That way I can get those into the presentation piece and be ready to talk about those on these calls. So if you have anything you want to see, hear, anything you're wondering about Blueforce or Epay, the processes, whatever, let me know and we'll be happy to include those in these conversations. So with that, I'll say have a happy rest of the week, and we'll talk to you again next week on our Epay Tips and Changes webinar. Have a good day.